Are Georgia fans really happy that there's a quarterback change coming? I mean, I think that's a serious question. I think that Carson Beck was starting to really play well. Tennessee, UMass, Georgia Tech, Ryan, where he threw for 5 touchdowns and no interceptions. I just feel like there's way too many Georgia fans who are maybe a little too excited to see Gunnar Stockton, who was the backup for a reason. I still think Gunnar Stockton has a lot to prove. I think he played like a warrior in the second half of the Texas game. I think he is a special player. There's a reason why this staff believes in him, why this team believes in him. But Carson Beck was different. And I think Pete Carson Beck, Carson at his best, is when this team is at its best. And I just hope Georgia fans really remember, if this is the last time we see Carson Beck in a Georgia uniform, I hope they don't remember him for this up and down season and the interceptions that he's thrown. And I hope they remember him for a lot that he did for this program, especially the way he played down the stretch heading into that SEC championship game.
Yeah, I think first what I would say about that is just the large view on the quarterback doesn't come from detailed analysis, right? It's just coming from, hey, I see the 12 interceptions on the stat sheet. I see that he threw 3 picks in these handful of games. I see that this offense has been stagnant for a good portion of the season, and that's where it comes from. And even the screen passes and all that people are going to be complaining about, part of that they're going to associate with Carson Beck too, to an extent. So that's what it comes from. The Gunnar Stockton part of it sadly, I guess, is the way I'd put it, but it's just kind of the way things happen. The stadium, especially the Georgia crowd specifically, didn't get juiced up, and I think juice is the exact word Kirby used, until Gunnar Stockton went out there. And immediately, it kind of told you how this fan base feels about Carson Beck in person, because you've seen it online, and you know he's being attacked and all that. But then I think that was the first real in-person reaction to, this is how we feel about Carson Beck. They were excited when Gunnar Stockton got out there. Gunnar brings a different element to the offense. There are certain things that they will be able to do better with Gunnar Stockton. Other things, we really don't know yet, because we don't know how he's going to manage an entire game, and when the game plan is about him and about his strengths on the collegiate level, we just don't know yet. There's a lot of unknown with him. So people also don't recognize, I think that they started to recognize that this offense is just not the same as it has been in terms of from top to bottom talent in each position group. Every single position group for Georgia's offense is worse in 2024 than it was in 2023. Every single one of them, outside of Carson Beck. And his play took a hit from it, and it was pretty obvious in a handful of the games. So it comes from a lack of detail in paying attention to what's going on. This is a guy that's a legit, and still is, but it's taken a hit with the injury. A legit first-round NFL quarterback prospect that could end up being a starter quarterback in the NFL one day, and people seem to be ignoring that part of it.
Well, I think you touched on something very important there. We don't know yet what Gunnar will be like when he has to throw, I guess you could say. But y'all, I mean, I've talked about this a lot. I love drive charts. I think Georgia scored on all but 2 drives that Gunnar had. One was the interception, which was honestly pretty bad, and Kirby tried to take blame for that. But I mean, maybe that was true. I don't know. But and then one with the punt where Thorson got hurt. So both situations where they didn't score were really bad. Hey, here's where I'm at with Carson. He's the starting quarterback for a reason. He's definitely slumped at times, but no one. I think the thing that Georgia fans are the most elite at is eating their own. I mean, they're really good at that. And I've watched this in a bad way for 20. When you've done what I do for 25 years, the bulk of the time it's been on message boards. It's been people who care a ton about the team that they're spending money on to talk about, being very frustrated and aggravated. But the quarterback, whoever that person is, gets it the worst. David Shock got it almost as bad as anybody. Aaron Murray was bad. And I mean, Matthew got heat, not as bad as Aaron. Jake Fromm felt it a little bit, but I think one problem, and I think it's wrong, Matt, and you can tell me if this is right or not. I mean, I think people view Jake Fromm as one of their own, Stetson as one of their own. They don't view Carson that way, which I think is wrong. The guy's been at Georgia for 5 years. And I don't know if they say, well, he smiles too much, or he's got a tattoo sleeve, or I don't like that he's dating really good looking women. I don't know what Carson Beck could do more. I mean, I have all those things. I smile a lot. I date really hot women. I don't know why y'all are laughing. I do not have an arm tattoo, but in many ways, Carson and I are the same people, except he's really good at football. And so I think this is a crossroads of, we always hate the quarterback until they win the national championship. I know we all remember how it was for Stetson, and then people were eager to get Stetson out of there.
Yeah, and I just think there are too many of the average college football fans watch him and they say, well, this guy stinks. I got text messages from Clemson fans and Tennessee fans, and they're all like, man, well, you said this guy was going to be really, really good this year. And I'm just thinking, he's won games with his arm. He's led comebacks. If Georgia gets down 14-0 against Notre Dame or Indiana, would you rather have a healthy Carson Beck or a healthy Gunnar Stockton?
No.
Exactly.
I want to say this real quick while you paused. The Clemson people are experts at really bad quarterback play, what they've had to watch these last 2 years.
Most of them would say Kate Klubnik's a better quarterback than Carson Beck.
No, they would not. Not the super hot ones like my wife.
I just think he's getting too bad of a rap. Tennessee fans know how good Carson Beck is. I'll tell you that. And Georgia Tech knows that they could be up 14 with less than 4 minutes, and Carson Beck
Alabama knows
the ability to lead them back.
To be honest.
They were down 28-0. Gunnar Stockton's not leading them back in that game. Carson Beck did. No, he did throw the interception, but they took the lead, and it's because Carson Beck was dealing and throwing some darts down the field. I think he's getting a little too bad of a rap, and because if Gunnar Stockton goes out, Ryan, and throws an interception or two early, it's not going to take much for the Georgia fans to start thinking, oh, man, is this the guy? I mean, who's behind him? I mean, I don't want to put words into their mouth, but I do think that Carson is different. He is Jacksonville, and he doesn't look or act like the other Georgia quarterbacks have in the past. And I do agree with that take. And so maybe that's why it is what it is. But the drop passes, him just doing too much. He admitted that. He said, I'm doing too much. I'm forcing the ball in there when I don't need to. A lot of that is no Brock Bowers, no Ladd McConkey. So I've come to learn that Carson Beck is not nearly as bad as some of the moments he's had this year, but maybe he's not as good as I thought he was last year either. I think it's a little bit of in between. He is a good quarterback. He's better than I think most college football fans realize, but he is what he is as well. But he had some really big moments, and I hope Georgia fans remember those moments instead of the multiple interceptions against Texas and Florida.
Yeah, I like the way that you put it there at the end, Matt, is probably how I feel about him too. Maybe not quite as good as I thought he was a year ago when he was really dealing in all those games, but a lot better than what the general consensus, and the casual fan thinks. It's just one of those, and with him, he's just a victim to how it's been with, I'm sure, quarterbacks at a lot of places, but obviously we cover Georgia. It's just, if it's not exactly what people want, they want the next thing. And new is always better kind of mindset. It's how it was with Jake Fromm. People. This is a little bit different with Eason to Fromm, but with Fromm, you had Fields on his heels a little bit.
Well, there were still people that were all about Jacob.
Yeah, right. It's never because of the arm talent, right? Correct. And it's easier for people to rally around the homegrown kids, right? And that's a tiny part of what it is with Gunnar Stockton.
I don't think it's tiny, man. I think
it's a bigger part of it.
Well, here's why I say, because I don't think people embrace Jacob maybe the way that they when any of these guys let them down. Whenever the quarterbacks let someone down in any way, there's a loss, they don't play well, whatever, Georgia folks are really harsh on them. If they're not from Georgia or they don't look the way they want the guy to look, they really, they could kill him.
Yeah. The one that, that made sense and didn't make sense at the same time was Stetson. There were moments that were bad for Stetson, especially at the beginning. But he he obviously did so much for Georgia, and he was a homegrown kid, and people were just tossing him in the trash after the first national championship, after he led. I guess comeback's not a great way to put it. They came from behind.
It was a comeback.
After he led them in the fourth quarter and was dishing out those balls. And then, everyone flips the script after the 2022 season happened, as they should. But everyone's just ready for something new. It's not working, right? Because they want it to be perfect, or at least close to it. And it's just not going to be that unless they have an absolute stud back there. And that's just not the case.
But in the fun, in the imperfections, I mean, what I mean by that is, if every game did not have drama, and these dogs, unfortunately, Matt, have excelled at drama, that I would prefer. My quote is always, I prefer blowouts, because I just do. But these guys are superb at the way they played against Kentucky. The win against Tech, the win against Texas, both times. But the second one, would it be as much fun if you just drilled everybody? I mean, it's easier for me. I prefer blowouts, but the imperfections in life are what makes the world go round. And if you can't, it helps you understand how great. Matt and I were talking about Indianapolis earlier this morning. Would it have been as much fun? Looking back on it, would it have been as much fun if Georgia had gotten rid of Alabama in Atlanta and then gone on to beat Michigan in the national championship? No, that moment was epic because they beat Alabama in that moment, in that time.
Yeah. After the Kentucky game in Lexington, I told myself I'm going to bring an extra pair of boxers for every game because of not only the press box food, whatever we get, but the way these dogs play, man. And it has been very stressful. And I tell you, it's weird watching kind of from the press box in a way, because the feeling's a little different than, watching it from the stands or watching it on TV. You're trying to take notes. You're looking at the clock. You got to be locked in, because you got to write and cover. You got to remember everything going on and the little details. So it's hard to get kind of wrapped up in the moment. But, man, it has been a roller coaster of a ride, not only all season, but almost every week. I mean, the Mississippi State game felt like a kind of a blowout. The score maybe didn't indicate it. And they handled Auburn pretty well, and they handled Florida in that second half. But it hasn't been easy, and it hasn't been pretty. But these are different dogs. These are different dogs. They will rip your throat out as soon as you think they're dead, right? Kirby said they're the never say die dogs. And I think that's one reason why he really loves this team. But a lot of it has been Carson Beck leading this team from behind. And I do think these quarterbacks could not be more different, right? You've got Jacksonville versus Rabun County. You've got Lamborghini versus possibly lifted pickup truck. Just different guys, right? And different style of quarterbacks. You've got the dual threat, and you've got a slightly mobile enough pocket passer in Carson Beck. So they're different. And Gunnar Stockton very much has that all-American Georgia boy type of look that I think Georgia fans maybe inherently kind of gravitate to more than Carson Beck. But I hope Carson Beck is remembered for all of the good things that he's done for this program if we never see him throw another pass again in that uniform.
I'll get on trying to confirm Gunnar Stockton's vehicle of choice. One of the other things
he had in high school. I know that. He had a really nice truck.
The exact same thing. It's probably the exact same thing if I had to guess. They are very different. All of these quarterbacks have been pretty different for Georgia, right? From Jake to Stetson onto these guys. Gunnar has nothing to say. Nothing.
Not a talker.
Like, very few media availability. He's got nothing to say. Very country. I'm not going to try to emulate the way that he spoke in the post game press conference, or on the sideline interview. But he is what a lot of Georgia fans they're the same, right? And they have the same background. I grew up very close to Gunnar Stockton. I get it. So there's a lot to him. He's also a high school football legend in Georgia. That's the other part of it. People know Gunnar Stockton. They didn't know Carson Beck when he was in high school, winning a state championship down there. But they knew that Gunnar Stockton was breaking all those records and lowering the shoulder and just destroying all these high school middle linebackers and throwing it over the top. I mean, what he did at the high school level was very special, and there was attention brought to it. So people know about that. It's easier to rally behind someone that's from Georgia than from out of state, but Carson is, I don't know if there's anything I would necessarily say he's elite at, but in terms of just looking around at the rest of the country, I mean, Carson Beck is one of the handful of quarterbacks you want on your team if you're making a push for the national championship. And at the end of the day, no matter what Gunnar Stockton is going to end up being at this point in time, we don't know what that looks like. We don't. It could be great, could be bad, could be somewhere in the middle.
Cam Newton, Deshaun, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence. There's no shortage of quarterbacks. They don't have to be or look like or be from or whatever. You'd take any of those guys if they wanted to play at Georgia and would sign. There cannot be we want our guy to be like this. That's not how life works, okay? Ryan Puglisi, he's not from here, okay? So just I want to end on this. If Carson Beck wasn't about that team and his team, what do you have his jersey on for at the end of the game? What was he doing? Because he sure had ice on his elbow and his throwing shoulder. That guy definitely
went back out there.
He went back out there, and he only could go back out there, Ryan, in a 30-second period. Let's just say a minute and a half period. I'm not aware that he ever took his pads off. So he didn't. No, I didn't see it. So
I was watching him on the sideline. He was padded up the entire time.
So before you vanquish Carson Beck to the sideline, just remember that moment. And for the record, for the people in the comments section, which is great, we enjoy that. Just because we're talking about reality with Carson doesn't mean we're doubting Gunnar Stockton. I mean, Gunnar Stockton has the capability of winning the national championship. My suspicion is if you had a healthy Carson Beck, it would be easier. But there are things that Gunnar can do, y'all, that Carson can't. And the read option immediately becomes available. And by the way, what also was not available for Carson Beck the bulk of the season was Trevor Etienne. And he is available now. Thanks for watching.